You'd think the scariest part of being a nurse would be the blood, the trauma, or the death. But not here. Not in this place. At this military hospital, tucked deep in the Arizona desert, the dead don't always stay dead. And the worst part, it's not even the creatures. They trained us to expect those. It's the rules. Rules so strange and specific, they couldn't possibly be random. And if you break even one, you disappear. I wish I'd never signed that non-disclosure form. I wish I'd never taken the oath. But above all, I wish I followed the rules. I started at Camp Ashridge Medical Facility on a Monday. I remember the date exactly, March 11th, because that's the day everything in my life started unraveling. When I say classified, I mean the kind of place that doesn't exist on maps. No road signs, no phone reception. We were flown in, blindfolded, with GPS scramblers on our watches. That should have been the first red flag. But I was a broke trauma nurse, and they offered triple the standard pay, plus housing and bonuses for discretion. So I signed. The place looked like a standard military hospital from the outside. Gray concrete, high fences, guards with mirrored sunglasses and rifles. But once you passed through security, it felt more like a cold, sterile mausoleum. Fluorescent lights buzzed overhead. Everything smelled like bleach and static. They gave me a uniform with no insignias, no ID badge, just a patch that read, Ashridge Level 2 clearance. And then came the orientation binder. That's where the rules were listed. I thought they were a joke at first. 1. If patient 302's monitor flatlines, do not enter room 11 for at least 5 minutes. 2. Do not feed anything to patient 519, no matter how much he begs. 3. If you hear breathing behind you while alone in hallway C, do not turn around. 4. At exactly 3:33 a.m., all staff must face a wall and remain silent for 60 seconds. 5. If a doctor you don't recognize asks you to prep a patient for surgery, ask for his clearance code. If he hesitates, run. 6. Never enter the supply closet in Ward D after 2 a.m. 7. Do not attempt to leave the facility during your shift. 8. If you find a second version of yourself wandering the halls, alert security immediately. Do not engage. There were 11 rules in total, but those 8 stood out to me immediately. I remember laughing nervously and asking the supervisor if it was some kind of hazing ritual. She didn't smile. Her name was Captain Dana Heller, and her eyes were the kind of hollow that screamed, I've seen things I'll never unsee. You follow the rules, she said quietly, or you end up like Reyes. I didn't ask who Reyes was. My first shift started at 10 p.m. I was paired with a quiet nurse named Caleb, who had permanent shadows under his eyes. He showed me around without speaking much, just pointing and muttering numbers. The wards weren't labeled with names, just patient IDs. Room 11 housed patient 302, mentioned in rule number 1. I asked Caleb about him, and he just said, don't talk too loud near that room. The halls were quiet. Too quiet. Not the kind of quiet where people are sleeping, but the kind of quiet that feels like something is holding its breath, just waiting for you to break the silence. At around 1:20 a.m., we did our usual rounds. Patient 519, the one mentioned in rule number 2, sat strapped to his bed with restraints thicker than my forearm. He looked like a normal man, gaunt, middle-aged, tired, but his eyes were unervingly bright. Nurse, he whispered as we passed. Please, I'm starving. I haven't eaten in days. He looked so pitiful it almost broke my heart. I paused. Caleb yanked my sleeve so hard I stumbled. "Keep moving," he hissed. "But don't talk to him. Don't listen. Don't even stop. Just walk." The man started crying behind us, but it wasn't normal crying. It sounded reptilian, guttural, like something trying to mimic a human sob, but getting the cadence wrong. I couldn't get the sound out of my head. By 2:55 a.m., we were back at the nurse's station. I was logging vitals when Caleb suddenly stood up. "Get ready," he said. "For what?" "Just do what I do." At 3:33 a.m. exactly, he stood facing the wall, hands at his sides, eyes shut. I followed. I felt ridiculous, like we were in some weird cult ritual. Then I heard it. Footsteps. Slow, dragging footsteps down the hallway. Not fast enough to be a person. Not robotic enough to be a machine. Just this awful dragging sound like something wounded. A shuffle. I held my breath. The noise got closer and closer. Then it stopped right behind me. The lights flickered. I wanted so badly to turn around. My instinct screamed that something was standing there, watching me, breathing down my neck. But I remembered rule number 3. So I kept still, silent, eyes on the wall. After exactly 60 seconds, the air shifted. The pressure lifted. I felt the presence disappear. Caleb let out a slow breath. "You did good." "What the hell was that?" "I don't ask anymore," he said. Just when I thought things couldn't get weirder, the intercom buzzed. "Code Delta, room 11. Code Delta, room 11. That was patient 302. The one we weren't supposed to go into if the monitor flatlined. I checked the screen. His vitals had flatlined at 2:27 a.m., but it was 3:38 a.m. now, over an hour later. Why the delay? I asked. Caleb looked nervous. We should have gotten that call an hour ago. We sprinted toward room 11. Caleb grabbed a crash cart. I felt adrenaline surging. This was something I knew. Reviving a flatline, CPR, defibrillation. We threw open the door. Room 11 was dark. Too dark. The lights were on in the hall, but inside that room, it was pitch black like a curtain of shadows that swallowed it whole. We stepped inside. That's when I heard a sound I'll never forget. A wet, slurping click, 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 like nails tapping glass underwater. It was coming from the ceiling. I looked up. Something was clinging to the corner. A thing that had once been human. Its limbs were too long, bent the wrong way. Eyes glowing orange like embers in the dark. Its mouth opened in a wide, unnatural grin as it whispered, "Too late, too late, too late." Caleb grabbed my arm and yanked me out. We slammed the door shut, panting. "I told them not to assign that room to us again," he muttered. At the end of my shift, I went back to my dorm in the compound. Every night we were escorted by armed guards. Not for our protection, at least not in the way you'd expect, but to ensure we didn't run. Sleep was impossible. My dreams were filled with flickering lights, twisted bodies, and the sound of that clicking creature in room 11. The next night, I came in to find a new nurse at the station. "Where's Caleb?" I asked. Captain Heller looked up from her clipboard. "He violated protocol." "What does that mean?" "It means he won't be joining us anymore." She handed me a fresh orientation binder. Rule number 12 had been added. 12. If your assigned partner disappears, do not ask questions. You will be reassigned. I opened my mouth, but she raised a finger. Do not ask. Just follow the rules. That night, I met my new partner, Nurse Reyes. You can get used to the smell of formaldehyde. You can get used to the eerie silence, the distorted faces, even the rules that don't make sense. But there are some things you shouldn't get used to, like the sound of something whispering your name when no one else is around. My name is Lena Carver, and I broke rule number 6. I went into the supply closet in Ward D after 2 a.m. I thought the rules were written by paranoid soldiers with PTSD. I was wrong. That closet doesn't store supplies. It stores something else. Something waiting to be let out. The second night shift felt worse than the first. Not just because I was exhausted from no sleep, but because I couldn't stop thinking about Caleb. One night, he was walking beside me, cold but steady. The next, he was scrubbed clean from every system like he never existed. Now I had Nurse Reyes. She was younger than me, maybe mid-20s, with curly hair and a tight bun and military posture that suggested she had field experience. But her eyes were wrong. Too wide, too alert, like she was constantly listening to a sound no one else could hear. "You're the new level, too?" she asked flatly, not looking at me. I nodded. "Follow the rules. Don't try to be brave." I didn't answer. I just followed her down the main corridor toward Ward D, the West Wing where supplies and isolation rooms were kept. We stopped at patient 403, a girl who couldn't have been older than 16. Her file said she was found wandering a nuclear testing site, alone and barefoot. Her skin had healed from radiation burns, but her eyes were all wrong. Too black, like polished stone. She stared at me as I changed her for bag. "You're new," she said, voice like paper tearing. "I'm Nurse Carver," I replied cautiously. "Are you going to open it?" she whispered. "Open what?" Her eyes darted toward the hallway, the door in the dark. "It's hungry." Before I could respond, Reyes snapped. "No talking with 403 unless instructed. Let's go." We passed room 22, then 23. The numbers were painted in harsh red, almost like warning signs instead of identifiers. Then we stopped in front of Ward D's supply closet. Reyes visibly tensed. "We never go in here after 2 a.m., she said. "Rule number 6. What's in there?" No one knows, but sometimes it knocks. I waited, unsure if she was messing with me. And if it does, you don't answer. You don't touch the door. You just walk away. By 1:45 a.m., we were back at the station. Reyes was logging vitals while I took a break, sipping burnt coffee that tasted like copper. That's when I noticed something odd. A blinking red notification on the room monitor for patient 519. It said, "Feeding attempt detected. Alert supervisor." I stared at it in disbelief. "No one's feeding him," I said aloud. Reyes stood up fast. "Show me." I pulled a log. No food was recorded, but the sensors in 519's room showed movement near his mouth. Repeated movements, like something invisible was putting food in. Reyes' face paled. "It's starting again." "What's starting?" Before she could answer, the overhead lights flickered once, then a second time. Then we heard the knock. 3 slow knocks, coming from inside Ward D. Reyes froze. "It's past 2 a.m. My watch read 2:04 a.m. The knocks came again, louder, this time accompanied by something else. A rattling metal creak, like a doorknob being twisted. "I thought no one opens that closet," I said. "They don't," Reyes whispered. "It opens itself." We should have walked away. That's what the rules said. But something made me stay. A noise. No, a voice. So faint I thought I imagined it. It said, "Lena." It was my name. The door creaked open half an inch, just enough to show total darkness inside. No shelves. No mops. No light. Just black. Reyes grabbed my arm. "Don't look inside. That's how it finds you." I was paralyzed. A long, pale hand reached out of the darkness. Not crawling. Sliding across the floor like it had no bones. Its fingers ended in small, childlike fingernails. Then a face appeared, but not like a person peeking around the edge. It grew out of the dark. Eyeless, nose missing, a mouth filled with hundreds of teeth, layered rows like a shark's. It didn't lunge. It smiled. Reyes hit the emergency lockdown button. Metal shutters slammed over the closet with a loud clang, sealing it shut. I collapsed against the wall. What the hell was that? She shook her head. You didn't break the rule. It opened the door, not you. That matters. Just don't acknowledge it again. Don't talk to it. Don't listen. I wanted to run, to leave. But rule number 7 rang in my ears. Do not attempt to leave the facility during your shift. We returned to the station. At 3:33 a.m., we followed protocol. Faced the wall. Stayed silent. But this time, the footsteps didn't stop behind us. They circled us. I felt the warmth of breath on my neck. Then a whisper. You saw it, didn't you? I clenched my jaw, staying silent. Something reached out, just a finger, and gently touched the back of my head. Ice flooded my veins. Then it was gone. Reyes was shaking. That's not normal, she whispered. It doesn't usually touch people. We turned. There was a smear of black tar on the floor behind us. Don't follow it, Reyes said. Of course we did. The trail led back to room 11. Patient 302's door. Why would it lead us here? I asked. Reyes didn't answer. Her eyes were wide with terror. Wait, look, I said. The door was open. But inside, it wasn't dark anymore. Room 11 now looked like a living room, carpeted, with a fireplace. A worn-out armchair sat near a bookshelf. In the chair, a man sat reading a newspaper. He looked normal, until he looked up. His face peeled. The skin looked like paper, held on with glue. His eyes were mismatched, one brown, one entirely white. Come sit, he said pleasantly. It's warmer in here. I stepped back. That's not real. It's a trap, Reyes said. Close the door. But I heard something else from the room. A baby crying. That sound, it hit me deep. It sounded exactly like my sister's child, the one who died last year. It couldn't be real. It couldn't. I hear my daughter, Reyes said. Her voice was distant. She took one step inside the room. The man stood from the chair, but his legs didn't move right. They bent sideways, not forward, like broken stilts. I grabbed Reyes. Don't listen. We yanked the door shut. The lights went out instantly. In the darkness, a voice hissed. You'll come back. You always do. Back at the nurse's station, Reyes finally told me the truth. Ashridge is a containment facility, she said. Not a hospital. We're not healing anyone. We're feeding it. Them. What do you mean feeding? Every rule is a barrier. Each one keeps them from reaching the surface. We're the keepers. And when someone breaks a rule, someone like Caleb, it opens a door. What happens to the people who vanish? She didn't answer, just handed me something from her pocket. A dog tag. It read, Caleb H. Morton, Ashridge Level 2 DNR. Do not resuscitate. That night ended an emergency lockdown. A siren rang across the compound. Red lights flashed. An automated voice echoed. Containment breach in Wardy. Lock all doors. Do not engage entities. Repeat, do not engage entities. We sprinted back to the dorms. All I could think about were the rules. Not to turn around. Not to feed them. Not to leave. I didn't sleep. I dreamed of doors that opened themselves. Of pale hands dragging across concrete. Of faces that were my own. They told us the rules were there to protect us. That if we followed them, we'd be safe. But what they didn't tell us was why. Now I know. Each rule keeps something buried. A hunger, a shape, a truth not meant for the human mind. And the night someone broke rule #8, everything started to unravel. There's no hiding from what's inside Ashridge, because it knows your name, and it wears your face. Rule number 8, never respond to your reflection if it blinks. I used to think that was the dumbest rule on the list, until I saw mine blink when I hadn't. It happened just after the lockdown was lifted. Reyes and I were washing up in the level 2 station restroom, trying to erase the grime and blood from our uniforms. We hadn't spoken much since the breach in Ward E. Both of us were waiting for someone to come and take the responsibility off our shoulders. No one did. I splashed water on my face, staring into the chipped mirror, and that's when I noticed it. My reflection was smiling. I wasn't. Just a flicker, half a second, enough to make my breath catch. I turned away fast, refusing to meet its eyes again. I pretended I hadn't seen it, pretended everything was normal. But deep inside, I knew it wasn't my face anymore. That day, I requested to speak to someone higher up, an administrator, a commander, anyone with answers. The only person who came was Dr. Clemens, the psychiatrist who supposedly oversaw patient mental evaluations. He walked in wearing a crisp white coat and a calm, grandfatherly smile that made my skin crawl. I hear you've been disturbed by some of the facility's anomalies, he said as he settled into a chair across from me in the observation room. People are disappearing, I told him. My reflection moved. The closet opened. There are things here that aren't human. He nodded slowly. Lena, may I ask, did you follow the rules? I clenched my jaw. I followed everyone. And yet you saw something in the mirror. Yes. He scribbled something in a leather-bound notebook, the kind no one uses anymore. Sometimes, he said gently, the facility shows us things based on our fear. You must not feed it. If the hospital, Ashridge, isn't just a structure. It's a containment field, yes, but it's also alive in its own way. Psychic architecture. The rules are pressure points. If we ignore them, if we disrespect them, things get in. He stood and patted my shoulder. Keep your eyes forward, Nurse Carver. And whatever happens, don't answer if your reflection speaks. That night, I was back in Ward D with Reyes and a level 1 nurse named Jordan. He was new, a little cocky, a little too curious. We were restocking the medication fridge when Jordan said, "Hey, what's the deal with room 6? Reyes looked up from her chart. Room 6 is sealed. Do not enter. That's rule number 4. He smirked. Come on. I heard some guys say it's just a decoy room. They keep a busted gurney in there or something. Reyes stepped forward. It's not a joke. But Jordan was already walking toward it. Jordan, I called out. Stop. He touched the doorknob. Reyes lunged forward. Too late. The door creaked open, and the smell hit us first, like burning hair and spoiled milk. Inside, the room was pitch black, except for a single overhead surgical lamp swinging slowly, creaking with each sway. And on the gurney was a body bag, only it wasn't zipped. The plastic was peeled open just enough to see a face inside. My face. Jordan leaned in, and the body's eyes snapped open. They weren't eyes, they were holes. Deep, writhing voids with something moving inside. The thing in the bag sat up, its head tilted at an impossible angle as it grinned at Jordan, revealing a mouth full of slick, chattering teeth. It screamed, and the lights in the hallway exploded in sequence. Reyes slammed the door shut and shoved a level 3 override key into the panel. We heard Jordan's screams on the other side. We never saw him again. Reyes didn't talk much after that, She started shaking during her vitals rounds, refusing to go near room 6 or even look in the mirrors. I heard her whispering to herself sometimes, things like, "They remember the ones who look too long. The mirror wears your name like a suit. They get hungry when you sleep." That night, while reviewing patient logs alone, I noticed something chilling. Every staff member listed as terminated had one thing in common. Their final log entry was timestamped between 3:33 and 3:34 a.m. Every single one. That time, when we were ordered to face the wall and stay silent, wasn't a drill. It was feeding time. Later that shift, Reyes disappeared during bed checks. I found her in the bathroom, her back pressed against the wall, eyes locked on the mirror. She was whispering. No, I didn't blink. I didn't. "Reyes," I said, moving toward her slowly. "You're okay. Come away from the mirror." "She's inside," she hissed. "She's smiling like me. She said if I answer, she'll let me go. She said I'm tired. I am tired." I grabbed her arm. "Reyes, listen to me. That's not you in the mirror. It's bait. Don't respond. Don't speak." She looked at me, and her reflection winked. And then it spoke, with my voice. "You're next, Lena. You're going to let me out." I turned Reyes away from the glass. She was sobbing now. "I don't want to be here anymore." Neither did I. At 3:33 a.m., the lights dimmed again. This time, I was alone in the level 2 ward. Reyes was sedated and locked in her bunk room after her breakdown. I faced the wall. Footsteps came like always. But this time, they didn't stop. They entered the room. I didn't move, didn't breathe. And then I heard the voice. "Lena." It wasn't a whisper. It was a perfect imitation of my mother's voice. The voice I hadn't heard in 10 years. Not since she died. "Baby, turn around. I'm here. It's me." I squeezed my eyes shut. "Please," it begged. "They said I could see you. Just for a moment. Don't you want to hug me?" My breath hitched. Tears welled up. I wanted to turn, but I remember the rule. Rule number 3. If someone calls your name at 3:33 a.m., do not turn around. I clenched my fists. The voice grew sharp, twisted. "You're not real," I whispered. And then the voice changed. Low, inhuman. "You will be." A blast of freezing air hit the back of my neck. Then silence. Later that morning, I went to Dr. Clemens' office. I had made a decision. "Tell me the truth," I demanded. "What is Ashridge?" He sighed and closed his notebook. "It's a prison. For concepts. For things that existed before names. They don't belong in our reality. They don't eat like we do. They eat identity, memory, reflection." I stared at him, stunned. They were the faces of the people they consume. And the rules? They're agreements, not laws. Agreements between them and us. Break one, and they get a little closer. "Why don't you shut it down?" I asked. "Burn it to the ground." "You can't destroy a place that exists in both mind and matter," he said quietly. "You can only guard it, or feed it." As I walked out of his office, I passed a group of guards dragging a gurney covered in a white sheet. The tag on the foot, Jordan M. Delaney, level 1 nurse, DOA. His body was gone, but the hallway mirror, it showed 3 people walking past. Only 2 of us were real. They told me Ashridge was a hospital, but hospitals don't breathe in the dark. They don't whisper your name in voices you miss. They don't bleed through the walls when you break the rules. This place isn't meant to heal. It's meant to hold something in. And now, the rules are changing, one by one, because something has escaped, and it wants me next. Rule number 10. Never volunteer for Sublevel 5. You never forget the smell. Sublevel 5 wasn't on any official map. There was no elevator button for it, no schedule posted on the board. The only way to access it was by inserting a dual-coded key into an unmarked panel behind the med storage. Only command-level personnel ever went down there. So when I received a sealed envelope stamped mandate, S5 visitor, clearance temporary, my blood ran cold. Reyes tried to stop me. "You don't come back the same," she said, her voice trembling. "What's down there?" I asked. She looked at me with haunted eyes. "What happens when a god forgets its name?" I descended into Sublevel 5 just after 0100 hours, escorted by 2 silent MPs with matte black helmets and no-name tags. They carried modified pulse rifles and didn't blink once on the entire ride down. The air got thicker as we descended, like it was pressurized with grief. When the elevator doors opened, the hallway was wrong. The geometry didn't make sense. Angles fell off. The ceiling sloped unevenly, and the floor seemed to tilt gently downward in every direction at once. Even the colors were off, like everything was washed in a sterile, greenish gray that hurt to look at too long. A security officer met me at the checkpoint. "You're here for patient is 7-19, he said. "Don't speak unless spoken to. Don't ask questions. Don't touch the walls. And for the love of God, don't offer it your name." Patient A7-19 was held in Containment Chamber B, behind 3 security doors and a viewing glass 2 feet thick. He looked normal, a man in his 30s, maybe, slender, pale, wearing standard issue white pajamas. His hair was slicked back, and he sat cross-legged in the center of the room, staring at the wall. Vitals every hour. Psychological notes. No physical contact, the officer said, then stepped out. I entered the observation room, and he turned toward the glass before I made a sound. His eyes locked onto mine. I froze. He smiled and mouthed Lena. I hadn't introduced myself. I tried to convince myself he'd read it from my badge, that someone must have told him. But deep down, I knew better. For 3 nights, I monitored him. He never moved, never ate, never blinked, but he knew when I was watching. Once during my second shift, I caught my reflection in the glass, and it winked, but he hadn't moved. On the 4th night, I received a revised rule sheet. There was now a rule number 13. Rule number 13. If patient A7-19 offers you information about the outside world, plug your ears. He only tells what he's already changed. What the hell did that mean? Meanwhile, Reyes was getting worse. She hadn't returned to rotation since the Jordan incident. She'd taken to writing numbers on the walls of her bunk in what looked like blood, or something worse. 6, 6, 6, 333, 19, 42, 1, 1, 1. She kept repeating the last 3. I confronted Dr. Clemens. "She's unraveling," I told him, "and I think something is leaking out of the sealed wards." He didn't argue. He just said, "The rules are degrading." Degrading? He folded his hands. "The more breaches, the weaker the framework. The rules function like sigils, anchoring our dimension over theirs. But once enough are broken, the binding fails." I returned to Sublevel 5 that night and found a chair waiting inside the observation room. Not outside, inside the patient's chamber. The door was open. A note rested on the chair. "Sit. He wants to talk." I should have run, but I sat. The man smiled. "Do you remember Caleb?" I stiffened. "He worked in records," he said casually. "Blonde hair, big laugh. Used to sneak extra morphine for the older patients when no one was looking. Caleb disappeared. I said. He saw something he shouldn't have, the man replied. Rule number 5, wasn't it? I nodded numbly. Never enter the records room after 2 a.m. He broke it, the man said. They took his name. What do you mean? Try saying it out loud. He whispered. Try remembering his voice. I opened my mouth and realized I couldn't. The sound of his name was gone, like my brain had deleted it, like something had erased him. Caleb no longer exists, the man said, but his scream still does. Want to hear it? I stumbled back. Too late, he grinned. And then I heard it, a scream that rose from the walls themselves, like a man being torn apart inside my own ears. I filed an emergency report and requested immediate quarantine protocol for Sublevel 5. The reply came in the form of silence. No one acknowledged my memo. No one mentioned it again. The MPs guarding the elevator were gone. The key panel was offline. I've been cut off. Rhea stopped speaking entirely. She just rocked back and forth in her bunk, whispering the same phrase. The closet door opened, but no one was there. No one was there. I checked the supply closet camera logs. At 3:33 a.m. on the last 5 nights, the door opened by itself. No one entered. No one left. Until last night. Last night, something stepped out. Just a flicker. A tall, thin figure, all black silhouette, no facial features. Moving like it was remembering how to be human. And the camera feed? It cut to static the moment it turned toward the lens. That's when I knew. We were losing. The rules were changing. Becoming flexible. Slippery. They were bending because something inside Ashridge was learning. Learning how to get out. And then, on my next rotation, I was reassigned. Primary care, room 9. I froze. Room 9 had been sealed since 1971. The last nurse assigned there reportedly gouged out her eyes with a clipboard and wrote a phrase in her own blood. It walks in reflections. I tried to refuse the assignment, but Clemens cornered me. She's awake, he said. Who? The woman in room 9. The first patient. The reason we build Ashridge around her. She's starting to remember what she is. If she says her name, do not answer. If she asks for a mirror, break it. If she calls you sister, run. He leaned in, his eyes suddenly glassy. You want to know the truth, Lena? I hesitated. He whispered. She wrote the rules. I entered room 9 the next morning. There was no bed, no medical equipment, just a chair in the center of a white room and a figure sitting in it, facing the wall. Long white gown, bare feet, hands folded in her lap. She didn't move as I stepped in, didn't speak, until the door closed behind me. Then she said, "Your reflection doesn't belong to you anymore." I stood frozen. "You gave it too much," she continued softly. "You fed it with fear. Now it's wearing your life. What do you want from me?" I asked. She turned her head slightly, just enough for me to see her face. It was mine, but older, paler, smiling like it knew exactly how I'd die. I am what remains when the rules collapse. Then the lights flickered, and for a split second, I wasn't in the room anymore. I was inside the mirror, watching myself from the other side. I woke up 2 hours later, slumped outside room 9. A note was clutched in my hand. In perfect cursive. Rule number 0. There are no rules anymore. Ashridge has no more rules. Only whispers behind walls that shouldn't breathe. Only reflections that don't match your face. Only patients who remember your past better than you do. I try to follow the rules, but they changed. Now the mirror moves when I don't, and someone else is wearing my name. The truth isn't in the files. It's inside me, and what I am was never supposed to wake up. Final entry log, 4:06 a.m. Lena Morgan, RN, Observation Base C, unsecured. There are no more announcements over the intercom. No code reds. No pagers. Ashridge is breathing in silence. The emergency backup lights are pulsing like a heartbeat. Everything smells like formalin and wet copper. And I know now, I was never hired here. I was summoned. It started with Rule 0. There are no rules anymore. That note didn't just break the rules, it erased the contract. Like the framework of logic that once barely held this place together had finally cracked wide open. Reality is leaking now. I found Reyes outside the morgue. She was naked, covered in ink. Not blood, ink. Thick, black, and flowing from her eyes and ears. She smiled. "Did you think the rules were meant to keep you safe?" she whispered. "They weren't. They were meant to keep us in." And then she turned to liquid, collapsed into a puddle of shadow that slithered beneath the floor tiles, laughing. Dr. Clemens is gone. The last thing I found in his office was a handwritten page, not paper, but skin. On it, a message. I try to contain her, but she remembers now. "You must finish what I started." And beneath it, scrawled in tiny letters, "She's not a patient. She's the blueprint." I didn't understand until I checked my own personnel file. It was hidden under layers of encrypted logins in the server room. Name, Lena Morgan. Birthplace, redacted. Genetic origin, error. Project file, mother's mirror. The attached image wasn't a photo. It was a sketch of the woman in room 9, but with one crucial detail. In her hand, she held a mirror, and in the reflection was me. I tried to run, tried to leave the facility, but every hallway looped back to the North Ward. Time warped, minutes stretched into hours. I passed the same bloodstain 5 times, and each time it was fresher. And then, patient A7-19 appeared, not on the monitors, in front of me, smiling. "You were never a nurse," he whispered. "You were the test." I pieced it together from scattered memos, burned pages, and scribbled notes left behind by the other staff, those who hadn't already been consumed. Ashridge wasn't a hospital. It was a containment crucible, a generational experiment to trap a cognitive anomaly, an entity so complex and entangled with human thought that it could only be confined through belief structures, through rules. But rules only hold as long as they're believed in. And the moment we stopped believing, the prison cracked. That entity, the first patient, room 9, she is the origin, the mother of all thought viruses. And I'm her daughter, born of borrowed flesh, grown in this place like a mirror seed, a perfect reflection planted in the garden of reason. And now, I'm blooming. As I walked into room 9 for the last time, I no longer feared her, because I knew her smile before I saw it. It was mine. She stood this time, tall, elegant, her bare feet soaked in something darker than blood. "You've remembered," she said. "I have. No more rules between us. No more mirrors," I agreed. She tilted her head. "Are you ready to become what you were meant to be?" I took her hand. It was cold, but it was alive. And as we touched, the room fractured, like glass shattering around a stone dropped in still water. The ceiling twisted upward into impossible angles. The air became liquid thought, and the truth came rushing in. The truth? Ashridge isn't underground. Ashridge isn't even real. It's a mental construct, a shared psychoscape designed to bind her. And all of us, nurses, doctors, patients, we're avatars, mental programs enforcing the illusion of stability. But I'm the only one who woke up, because I was never meant to serve. I was meant to merge. And now, With her memory restored, we are whole. My reflection no longer mimics me. It leads me. I see it now, walking down hallways I've never been in, opening doors to dimensions I haven't visited yet. The old Ashridge is collapsing. The rules have crumbled, but something new is forming in their place. Me. Addendum. Transmitted signal intercept. Unclassified airwave frequency 119.9 megahertz. Location 39.53 degrees north, 77.44 degrees west. Estimated proximity Fort Detrick, Maryland. Signal repeating every 9 minutes. This is Nurse Lena Morgan. Ashridge facility is gone. The structure has been replaced with living code. She is merged. I am all reflections now. Do not look into mirrors. If your reflection smiles first, run. The rules are watching, and they are very, very hungry. The end.